Hello everybody, in today's video let's talk about whether or not soulmates are real, and I'm just going to be explaining this to you from the perspective that I understand it, and the answer is going to be both yes and no. So let's go ahead and dive into that, and I feel like the very first place that we should dive into that is understanding where this idea originally came from. And once we understand where this idea came from, we're going to try to understand soulmate naturally is going to bring us about to a spiritual type of conversation. So we're going to talk about that real briefly, and then give you the closing final remarks on that. So that's the plan for today's video. Hopefully by the end of the video, if you're confused on this type of stuff, you're going to know whether or not actually a soulmate is something that is in your life going to become a reality. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the content for the video. This is the channel that's like my online thoughts journal. So I just talk to you about whatever is on my mind, and hopefully this stuff is there to help you. You know, with this whole channel, I just want to, I guess, spread connection. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys because it really feels like you guys are my best friends. So let's go ahead and dive into it. First things first, where did this idea of the soulmate actually come about? And originally, actually, this idea came from, I believe it was a journalist or a novelist in the 1700s. He was the first person to actually use the word soulmate. Before that, it was never really discussed as soulmate in the sense that we think of it now. So that word and that term that we now use, let me adjust this brightness real quick. Yeah, so that word and term that we now use is and associate with the idea of soulmate became very popular after he originally mentioned it, after he originally brought it up. And the reason why he brought it up is he was actually just writing this journal. It was I believe this poem that he was talking and using it for this example. And once this idea essentially caught fire, it started spreading, and now it's even associated with the terms of marriage and whatnot. Now that society has associated marriage with love. Whereas marriage originally, if you look at the history of marriage, marriage has not always been about love. Marriage was usually used in different contexts, whether it was for political gain or monetary gain. It was used to keep wealth inside of a certain family so that the church didn't take it or the government and the state didn't take it. Marriage wasn't used initially as a love contract, even though now it is. So once this idea of soulmate came around, and also along with the shift of marriage, you come to this situation where people are now associating soulmate with marriage and the union of two people coming together forever. Back that with the idea of religions coming together and saying, you know, if you're going to go to heaven, you're going to spend the rest of your time there forever for, you know, the rest of eternity. So these ideas all compound and come together to really bring about the whole sentiment that society now has around soulmate. So now the association, when probably you're looking and when you're about to, you know, click this video and you see the title, are soulmates real? You're questioning, this question has now turned into love, and whether or not you're going to have that one person in your life that is going to be, you know, the perfect match for you forever and ever, essentially. And now we're going to dive into more of the spiritual side of things to try to understand it, or at least how I understand it from this point of view. And if we're looking at this, there's originally the way that people want to associate this with is that under the traditional view, you have God, right? This invisible presence, and he made you, and then there's the, you know, other presence that also he made for you, right? So you two pair together, and it's like two pieces of a puzzle. You come together, and you live happily and whatnot. I'm actually going to say that I am now actually straying from this point of view, and I don't necessarily see this as entirely accurate anymore. Although I understand the logic and the reasoning and understanding behind it, I don't fully perceive this to be the truth anymore, at least not for me. What I now come to understand from this is really, if the way that I look of it is that God is creating these different beings, or this, spiritual side of stuff. We're projected onto this physical life that we have, and there's certain streams of everything of consciousness that gets I can't even believe I'm saying any of this stuff. There's certain streams of consciousness that get swept down and spread out, right? And so essentially, the way that I think about it now is that you have these certain splits, and when you imagine that it's a river, right? And so you have these rivers that come about and they separate from each other, and when these two rivers meet up, it's like the familiarity of coming from that one source comes together, and that's actually what feels like a soulmate to most people. And what I think is actually interesting, and it's another idea that we've been exploring on this channel, is when I talked about how you define the success of a relationship. Do you define it based off the longevity of a relationship or the quality of a relationship? Obviously, both. Many people want both, but what I've come to really kind of accept is that maybe, although we as humans are physically capable and biologically capable of pair bonding with somebody, biologically attaching ourselves to somebody for the long term, which serves also as a physical means of survival, we have that part of us that comes together with somebody to create children, and then we stick with those children at least long enough for those children to be autonomous. That's why, in fact, a lot of marriages, some scientists believe a lot of marriages end after the first 6 to 8 years, is because around that time you've had enough time to create children that can now think for themselves and at least partly take care of themselves. If not, they can at least voice their needs overtly so that you are capable of, taking care of these children. So that brings us to this whole situation, not only of the spiritual side of everything, but now we have the biological side of pair bonding with somebody. But actually, after this time has come and people have raised children that are now autonomous, now you get divorce rates, and it's partly comes into play with certain people being in your life for certain periods of time. So then this brings us finally to the idea that a relationship, at least for me, is between two people, and I am now going to prioritize in my life the quality of a relationship over the longevity of a relationship. Yes, I want to keep relationships in my life for as long as possible, but for as long as they serve their purpose and help me grow and they help the other person grow. As long as we're both growing, that is the purpose of a relationship, in my opinion. And when time comes and the growth is done for both of us, it's okay for us to split ways. So then this brings us even further along into these ideas of the soulmate coming together forever. And now what I think this really comes down to, and it's going to be the final point in whether or not a soulmate is actually a reality in your life, is looking back at these childhood traumas, right? And looking back at these experiences you've had growing up. So when we are growing and becoming who we are in life, typically what you want is to experience the opposite of what your pain and hurt was. Now, obviously people can try to cope with it in many ways, but that is just a cover. Instead of, for example, I guess the example that I can think of off the top of my head is people who feel insignificant in life. What they want to do is try to create situations where they feel significant. This is a lot of the conversation we've had with the love bombing stage of narcissism. It's the reason it can be so addicting is because you feel so much significance, at least for a lot of us here that have spent some time on this channel. And for example, people that can grow up with, very little money, what is healing for them is to experience having a lot of money, and then they get to experience the opposite side of this stuff. So there's different traumas that can go on in life, and healing comes from being able to experience the opposite side of the spectrum. So now when we're looking at this idea of the soulmate, maybe you're one of those people, or maybe you're not, that has experienced abandonment, people leaving you, people not loving you for who you genuinely are as a person. Maybe you feel like you can't be authentic, and your only way for you to heal and to move on to the next stage of your life and continue your expansion and your growth in life is to actually come together with a soulmate and be that person that finds this soulmate in your life. And now you get to experience the opposite of the abandonment, the loneliness, and everything else that you experienced. And you get to be with somebody that you genuinely love fully and wholly for as long as that period is. And it can be forever, or it can be as long as you need to fully heal and feel that connection with somebody. So yes, in my opinion, there are soul mates. There are people that we are meant to be with, especially if it's going to help us heal and grow as people. However, it might not always fall under the traditional idea of being with this person forever. I know actually of many of you who I've commented on these videos and have said some things that you were married to this person that you were very in love with for many years at a time. Some of you have been married for 15, 20 years, very long times, and then you got a divorce. And in those situations, it's okay because maybe your growth was supposed to be during that time. In fact, some of you have commented and saying, you were married for 15 years, but the first 10 years were good and not the last 5 years. And maybe what's really going on here is that your time for expansion and growth finally came to a halt and you decided to split ways. And yes, it might have hurt. Yes, it might have been painful. But if you take a look, at least how I'm trying to look at it now, as trying to expand, once the relationship is done helping you grow, it has served its purpose, it is okay for it to split ways. There are some of you who will be a match, I guess, to being in a relationship with someone for the rest of your lives. But if that is not you, it's okay. It is okay for a relationship to come to an end and to let that go, as long as it is continuing to help your purpose in life. And I can say, I don't really know where I stand in this yet. Keep in mind, I'm 25, so I'm, still figuring all this stuff out. But I don't feel like right now in my life that idea of a soulmate is, fully going to be a part of my life at this moment, not for at least the next few years. I feel like I'm going to grow more as an individual at this moment, not by being in a relationship and by being on my own. I was in relationships in and out for like the past 8 years and stuff. So I almost got my fix, and now it's okay for me to move on and continue to grow apart from these relationships. So maybe in the future, I will have this idea of a soulmate because I want to have a family and whatnot. But at that time then I will be able to dive into that and experience the growth that comes from that. But at this moment in life, at this moment in time, I actually don't feel that the term soulmate actually fully serves the purpose of what these relationships are meant to do in my life. Now I invite you to look at your life and decide for your life, for yourself, is if this idea of a soulmate for the rest of your life is going to be good for you. And if it's something that you genuinely desire as a part of your life forever. And by taking the time to understand that, I think it'll put you in a really good spot. Keep in mind, in my personal opinion, this idea of the soulmate has been Disney-fied, has been meant to show the happily ever after. All we want in life, is to be happy. It's the pursuit of happiness. And when these Disney stories really tell us that there's this happily ever after once you get married to someone and you find your match. I mean, what sounds more blissful than that, right? But sometimes maybe that's just not the reality, and maybe it's not actually healthy for some of us to be in relationships with somebody forever. Now, it might be healthy for some people, but maybe not everybody. So I invite you to really take a close look at your life to understand where you're at in your growth process, where you are in your life, where you want your life to be, where your desires are, and to see genuinely what is going to serve you the most. With that being said, if you're one of those people that are maybe attached to a relationship unhealthily because you're scared of being alone and whatnot, I have this really cool thing that I've been learning lately. It's about the idea of the abundance mindset. What is that abundance mindset? And that abundance mindset is really allowing things to come in and out freely as they choose to come and go. Monetarily speaking, people that I was just watching this video, for example, on Mr. Beast, which is funny, right? And then he was talking about, he's making like $4 million a month. And what does he do? He spends it all. The money comes in and it flows out. And this guy has no worries about money at all. Like he said, he's like, if I ever need any money, I just spend less on the next video. And the money comes in and out freely, and he doesn't constrict the flow. And that's what he's been doing since he had no money. He's letting the money come in and out, and ever since doing that, it allows himself to open up and let this flow come in and out of his life. And I feel like that's also what I'm trying to do in my relationships. I'm going to let them come in and out freely as they choose to come in and out of life, as long as they're helping me grow and serve their purpose in my life. That is all I'm truly focused on at this moment. So I invite you, when you're thinking of this idea of the soulmate, to think about it from these terms. Is there somebody that is going to be good for you and your personal health and growth to be with together forever? Or is it to be there, to have a very high quality relationship for a limited time? Whether that's a couple months, a couple of years, or a couple of decades. Who knows? But it's all up to you and your personal growth in your life to see where it takes you. And we're all on just this freaking journey, who knows what it's going to end up like, but at least we can have fun while we're going through the waves and the crazies, the ups and the downs of relationships, because really that's all this is. So that does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching it. If you want to join the community of people that I'm building, we're talking about all this stuff, I guess, relationship-y stuff. Click on the link in the description down below. Really, not just relationship-y stuff. We're talking all about personal growth and whatnot. And relationships is probably the biggest portion of it, really. All the other stuff, I feel like, comes secondary to relationships, because relationships, what's the quote, right? If you have a lot of money, but you're, what is it? Nobody to share it with, you're miserable. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, people just want relationships in life. And if you're not getting relationships, what's the point in that? What's the point of having, $1 billion if you're going to be alone the rest of your life? It's not going to mean anything to you. So that does it for this video. Click the link in the description down below to join the Patreon community, where you're getting exclusive content and you're joining other people like us that are all talking about this stuff. Cool. Thanks so much for watching. See you on the next one.